We have an insider's alert today as the NCAA Board of Directors has endorsed a proposal to give more power to the five most prominent conferences, the Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and SEC. Hello, Shae Peppler here inside our Campus Insider studios. And to discuss what could lead to seismic changes in college athletics, let's welcome in our sports business insider, Kristi Dosh. And Kristi, how will today's vote ultimately change the landscape of college sports?
So in the past, all members of Division I, which is over 340 schools, have voted on every single rule change. Some of those rules only impact the larger universities and the larger conferences, and they've been unable to get through the legislation that they wanted. So this new structure will allow schools that play football at the FBS level, particularly in the Power 5 conferences, to have a weighted vote that's going to allow them, I think, to push through legislation that will benefit student athletes ultimately.
Well, Kristi, coincidence or not, tomorrow the Northwestern football players vote on unionizing. How much of today's vote is a reaction to increased pressure to provide more rights to student athletes?
You know, I think this has been a problem the NCAA has been trying to figure out how to deal with for some time, because a lot of the schools in those Power 5 conferences can afford to give greater benefits to student athletes, but they haven't been able to pass the legislation because of the way the voting has worked in the past. So I think this has been coming for a while, but certainly it's becoming more urgent because of the Northwestern unionization case and some of the other court cases that are out there.
You can say today's ruling is the first huge step in widening the gap between the haves and have-nots in college sports. If you're representing one of the other conferences, say the AAC or the Big East, what options, if any, do you have?
So there's going to be some legislation that the Power 5 conferences can pass without any input from the other conferences. However, when they pass that legislation, so let's say they pass legislation to go to cost of attendance for student athletes, any other conference can also enact that. So the Big East or the American Athletic Conference will have the option for their schools to also enact that legislation. It's just going to be an issue of whether or not those schools can actually afford to offer those sorts of benefits.
Interesting. Final question here for the fans. How will this affect the product on the field or on the court?
You know, I think this could impact competitive balance. We already have this sort of have-not divide, especially within FBS, between the Power 5 and the other 5 conferences. And I think this could really widen that gap, because the schools in the Power 5 conferences are going to be able to afford to do things that the schools outside of those conferences simply won't be able to afford to do. And student athletes will take that into consideration when they choose where they go to school.
All right, Kristi Dosh, our sports business insider, thanks so much for the insight.
Thanks for having me.
The next step, there will be a vote no later than August by the NCAA member institutions, and the new rules would likely go into effect in January. For more news and information surrounding college sports, be sure to keep checking CampusInsiders.com.